welcome to my and Catch's talk on Drupal 8. Basically, today we're going to tell you a little bit about what Drupal is. We're going to tell you about why we're using Symfony components to change the way that Drupal works. We're hopefully going to convince you that you should at least have a look at Drupal, why you might like it, and what's going to come when Drupal 8 is out. So before I go into all of that, a little bit about us. My name is Alex Pott. I'm an open source evangelist at Capgemini. I'm the Drupal lead for the Royal Mail project, and generally quite a busy person, but not busy enough to have someone do my slides for me like Dries, as you'll see later. And so this is Nathaniel Catchpole, who's...
So I'm the Drupal 8 branch maintainer, one of 3 people who can merge stuff into that branch. Work as a performance engineer at Tag 1 Consulting, and I've been using Drupal since about 2005, and started really contributing to like Drupal Core around the Drupal 6. Well, Drupal 6 has been developed, so it's the 3rd release, major release that I've been working on.
So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Drupal is. So as you heard this morning, and here is my version of Dries' nice drop-down side showing that Drupal does all the sites in the world. Well, as you heard, that we do 1 out of every 50 websites that you look at every week. 750,000 of them report home to Drupal.org. And we've got large sites, obviously, like the White House. We do the Royal Mail in Britain, and we do lots and lots of work with non-profits like War Child that you can see there. So at the moment, we estimate that 2% of the web is running Drupal. And in the future, that's going to be 2% of the web running Symfony. And the reason that we've got so many people using Drupal is because we have a lot of flexibility in what Drupal can do. We've got over 11,000 contributed modules. This is like additions to the Drupal core, kind of equivalent to Symfony bundles, of which maybe like 500 to 1,000 of them have a 10,000 plus install base. So that's a lot of people working on and using Drupal. So obviously we've got a lot of developers producing all this code. So here's some at a conference. Recently we had a DrupalCon Munich. We had 1,800 people attend that. On the final day we held a core sprint. We had over 300 new people working on Drupal core. So we've got a lot of people working on Drupal. We're going to bring these people up to speed with Symfony, with what's happening with Drupal 8. Of the thousands of the tens of thousands developers, we've got over 20,000 people with commit access to Drupal.org. And not only that, we have lots of contributors to the core of Drupal. So we've got over 1,000 contributors to Drupal 7, and already with Drupal 8, we've got 600 contributors. So here's a timeline showing the use of Drupal 6 and Drupal 7 about. 6 months ago, Drupal 7 overtook Drupal 6, and so now we're starting to think, well, we need to get Drupal 8 in place, and so we need a system that's going to convince all these people who are using Drupal 7 to use Drupal 8. So we've got to make Drupal 8 rock, otherwise they're going to stay with Drupal 7. But there's a problem. Drupal has a little dirty secret baked into its core, and it's because of this. This is the promised photo of Dries in his university dorm hacking on Drupal. And Drupal was built for him and his friends to share when they were going out, what they needed to buy or whatever, the beer run and all that. And so basically, it was built for them to access through their desktop computers at the time. So Drupal is basically designed for every single request to return fully themed HTML pages to a desktop browser. And we've been making this assumption for the last 11 years, and this is no longer true. It hasn't been true for a while, but it's really not true now. And in order to get something other than a fully themed HTML page, you basically need to load up all the code to do that, and then just exit out of Drupal before the theme system has come into place. And this is just a waste of time. It's a waste of resources, and it's really hard to make a Drupal site perform quickly when responding with JSON or XML or one of the plethora of things that we want a modern Drupal to be able to respond to. So why is this important? Well, as I've said, this is what's going to happen. Down the bottom here, you can see the 2% of the web that is running Drupal, all CMS sites, all sites. And then if we think about the explosion that's going to happen with mobile in the next 5 years, well, it's just going to outstrip everything that we've seen. Everyone's going to be accessing the web from their mobile from a plethora of devices, and they're going to expect their sites and their web applications to behave in a completely different way. And Drupal, its core, is not baked to do this. So we want Drupal to look something like this. We want Drupal to be able to communicate with any application in the most efficient and best way possible. And we want the developers to be able to choose how they do that and not assume that we're going to always be returning an HTML page when you're returning JSON to an autocomplete field or XML to a mobile application. So at the moment, yep, Drupal can already do all this stuff, but you have to add more modules to do it. So it's even worse than it just doesn't return a fully themed HTML page. You actually have to add a services module. So we're adding more craft to the system in order to return this. So we think that Drupal 8 needs to become this. It needs to change from a first-class CMS into a first-class REST server that is also a first-class web CMS. And we could have done this in a lot of different ways. We could have done it the old Drupal 5, 6, 7 way and rewrite our own HTTP library. But Symfony's here. And even better than that, there's Symfony components, which means that we can take each little bit of Symfony one by one and bake it into Drupal. And we can do it in a way that means that we don't have to replace the whole stack of Drupal in one go. It gives us a bigger chance of success. And the Symfony community has also responded to us when we reached out and we asked for more information. Fabian spent a lot of time, as Dries told you, he came over, he talked to the Drupal community about how we could do this and about how it's achievable. And as we've gone on doing this, we've found that there's more than just the request and the kernel that we can pull from Symfony. There's other parts of the Symfony system that we can use, and we'll tell you about that later. So as I said, we're using Symfony to help us solve our big problems. So first off, we've got our Whiskey initiative, which some of you will have heard about, which is how we're going to bake a REST server into the core of Drupal, how we're going to handle requests and responses. And as a kind of byproduct and a massive win of doing this, we've had to refactor Drupal Core to use PSR 0, which is changing the way that Drupal works. Drupal's traditionally been only invented here, kind of behemoth CMS, and we haven't been really interacting with the rest of the PHP community. But that's changing now because we've had to go PSR 0 in order to include Symfony. And so it's going to mean in the future that maybe Drupal can start to contribute components back. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson in how this is happening. And the easiest way is to look at the main file that creates a Drupal response. And so this is the Drupal 7 index.php, which, as you can see, is nice and procedural. We basically say Drupal bootstrap everything. Don't do any dependency injection. You're going to have the database whether you like it or not. You're going to have the theme layer, the form layer, everything. And then we're just going to call this function, menu execute active handler, no parameters, no nothing. And it's going to work out what to print out to the page. So the first thing that we did is look at what we can do with the bootstrap. And this is what we have now is just something that hopefully we're going to change, and we'll talk to you about how we're going to change that. But a less level of bootstrap so that we're doing the least amount that we can at the moment to load Drupal code in. And then we've started to bring in the Symfony components. So we've extended the Symfony kernel, and we've got our own Drupal kernel that allows us to then go on and use the Symfony request object. So now we have an index.php that begins to look more like a framework. It begins to look more like what you expect from a Symfony-based CMS. And so we're now able to handle a request and prepare a request depending upon what the person has asked for, what the request object is for. And this should look really similar to what you're used to, because this is the example from Fabian's how to build a framework, and it's almost exactly the same. So Drupal is moving to use all of the Symfony components that you've built for us. So now I'm going to hand over to Catch to tell you a bit more about how this has happened.
So when we first started looking at Symfony 2, the thing that we needed was HTTP library. Drupal 7 and earlier has dealt directly with PHP superglobals. So that Drupal bootstrap full, during that process, it rewrites over like the underscore get superglobal to say which path you're using. And then it making you execute active handler. It sees what's in there and then sends that to the router and finds out what's going on. And so if you wanted to kind of intercept that and do something else, then you need to you need yourself to overwrite get queue again. Say if you want to intercept a thing and then send it to a different root object, you're always interfacing directly with these superglobals. So it's like if you're going to be doing web services in either direction, we need a better HTTP library. And it came down in the end. There was like a few things, but a lot of frameworks had very highly coupled libraries. Like you couldn't just take the HTTP library out. So the only two that we found where you could take them out was Zen 2 and Symfony 2. And the Symfony 2 HTTP library was a little bit more featured. And when we started asking about it, as Alex has said, Fabian started helping out and people started getting involved and saying, yeah, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. So that was the first thing we adopted. And having adopted that, we've started putting in more parts of Symfony. This is what we're using at the moment. So there's HTTP Foundation, the class loader, dependency injection. Routing is kind of committed, but we haven't done the Drupal integration part yet. But there's an issue in the queue which has that working. So that's kind of taking our old router framework and kind of replacing the guts of it with a Symfony router. But there's certain features that we've needed that we still want to support that Symfony doesn't, but I think those are starting to move upstream. I'm not sure if anything got committed yet, but it's being worked on. And other bits and pieces like HTTP kernel and YAML. And that's currently it, but there may be, by the time Drupal 8 releases, there may be more. And as we get into the Drupal 9 development, maybe we'll see how it goes. So we're not just taking stuff from Symfony, we are contributing back. This is some of the pull requests. I think most of these have been merged, some might still be in progress. So we wanted to use Symfony session support. And Drupal has had something similar to Symfony's flash message support for years and years and years called Drupal set message. And you can set like different types of messages, like a warning and a notice and things like that. And they just come up like green or red and this kind of thing. But you can do that with the flash message support in Symfony. So someone worked on an upstream patch and that's been merged. So we can actually use Symfony session support and keep kind of feature parity with what we already have. And for us, because we're a very old project, we can break APIs like that. We just, if like we need to change an API, it just goes in, you make a note of it on a page somewhere, so it's documented for people in 2 years when they're upgrading their modules. But we just don't care about breaking APIs. But we do care about dropping features because people come and they're like, oh, the API changes, I'll do it this way. And when they're like, oh, I need to be able to do this and I can't do it anymore, then it's like, oh, sorry. So when we're replacing our old code, it might be, we might not like the old code, but we are often running into things that we cannot do with Symfony 2, and it's going to. I think this is just the beginning. It's going to be a lot of more upstream work from kind of Drupal core people as we run into issues, and there were small bug fixes with its adding features. So hopefully it'll be good for Symfony to start getting that. But I think it's still early days and people are still figuring out. Like our code style is completely different, so everyone goes up and it's like, your code starts this. But it'll get fixed up. And Symfony is not the only thing we're adopting. We added a new centralized plugin system to Drupal Core. So if you have like many different implementations of the same interface, we've had a lot of that previously, and there've always been custom ways to kind of hook them up to decide which one it is. And with Drupal, because there's so much assembling going on, we actually want to list what the different implementations of an interface are and let people pick them and like chain them together and things like that. So we wrote like a plugin and plugin discovery system, and plugin discovery is using doctrine annotations. And again, that because that was using reflection, it's now we don't use there's tokenizer support in doctrine because of that. So Drupal's kind of, we used to use some external libraries in Drupal Core, but in very small places. But you're starting to see a lot more kind of outward-looking work going on. And there's other things. I've started using Composer. I'm only using it like that much at the moment, but it's kind of slowly getting there. Some people are very excited about it, but no one's really pushing forward the work that much yet. And then there's Trig. There's a lot of interest in getting Trig working. Though we've actually got Trig committed to Drupal Core, but we haven't done any of the replacement of our like PHP template system, which is like a homegrown thing in Trig. And it's not just replacing like templates. There's like a whole infrastructure around like pre-processing variables and stuff that needs to be modernized and brought into line. So that's a big burst going on. And if you know about Trig and you're interested in Drupal using it, the people working on that would love help from people who really get Trig in. And then, yeah, Static Guzzle, imagine the leads aren't in yet, but they're being considered, and there's lots of other libraries that we're looking at. Either to replace, like, you know, code that was written 5 years ago that we don't maintain anymore, or to add features that we don't really have in Drupal Core without us writing them ourselves. So on the other side, we're adopting these components, but Drupal's code base is like Drupal 7 is like a hybrid of like PHP 5.2 classes just starting to be used, and a lot of code that was written like when you didn't have PHP 5, it was all PHP 4, so lots and lots of procedural code in there. And Drupal 8 is still a hybrid. We have Symfony components, we have like our own libraries that we use, and then we have like legacy procedural code. There's a lot. Drupal Core does quite a lot, and some bits look very different to other bits. So part of the process of adopting our libraries is modernizing our own code base. The things that we can't replace or aren't going to replace yet, and this kind of thing, is bring them up to like what you would expect a PHP 5.3 project to look like. And this is kind of where it's starting, and we're hoping that what we have that we like will start to have something similar to Symfony components, where you can actually pull those down individually, and we'll use Composer to manage our own internal dependencies. But that's not really happening yet. At the moment, there's like this folder, and there's stuff in it, and there's stuff that's not in there yet that's on its way. But there's some things to kind of figure out. So one of the issues that we have is licensing, because we're GPL, and that means we can pull in code from other projects and distribute it just fine. But if you want to put in GPL code into your MIT, you can't do that. And we haven't resolved this yet. If you're interested in like licensing issues and like having us play really nice with the rest of the Drupal PHP community, there's an issue there where this is just being discussed. Like especially new things that we write for Core, whether we initially license them MIT and then redistribute them, like start dual licensing some Drupal Core components. If you're not interested in that, then sorry. And also security, like we have a 40-person strong security team, and they coordinate and often fix security announcements for all 11,000 of those contributed modules, not just Drupal Core. The whole contributed repository on Drupal.org is supported by the security team. And we have like a very strict, like we only release security releases on Wednesday. They go out Wednesday evening every week. Core, if there's a core release, it'll be like the first Wednesday of the month, stuff like that. So when we've had kind of full control of our own code base because we were maintaining it ourselves, that's been like a very simple thing to coordinate, as long as you can find the people who know how to fix the issue. But we need to kind of start coordinating with other projects on security release cycles. And again, I mean, we don't need to do that for another year because we won't have a stable release that for another year. But we'd like to start talking about that now. And again, if you're interested in security, if you're working on one of the projects that we're starting to use, we'd like to know like how you're managing your own security releases and how we can kind of start coordinating more with that. And also for other projects, like other CMS, PHP, that are adopting Symfony components, it's going to be an issue for them as well. So it's not just like there's two or three different directions of coordination that may need to happen. So we'll see how that goes. A lot of people have said how much of a challenge it's going to be for Drupal developers to adapt to like the new Symfony world. For me personally, I don't actually think it's going to be that much of a change for like an end developer, because so many Drupal modules are at a very, very high level, and they don't touch a lot of the things that we're replacing. Like they're not really touching the HTTP request handling, things like that. There will be some changes, but every single Drupal core major release has like a whole raft of hundreds of API changes. So but it's going to be interesting. I might be wrong here. People might be panicking, running around on fire. But we'll see how it goes. So a question that came up in Jesus' talk, and we assumed people would ask us this, so we're asking it ourselves, is why you would use Drupal 8 and not plain Symfony. So can I just ask, who here knew what Drupal was before this morning? Is there anyone without a hand up? Is there anyone who didn't know what Drupal was before this morning? Maybe that was a better question. No, okay. So who's used it? That's like half the room. Okay. Who liked using it? Some hands went. That's probably all the Drupal developers that came to SymfonyLive. So the reason that we use Drupal, that we like it, is it's not a framework. It has some frameworky bits, but it does so much more that you don't need if you just want a framework. But it's not just a CMS. You don't like plug it in and you put some content in and you're done. What it is it's a platform that allows you to assemble your own CMS. So you have all these different bits and you can put them together, and even without writing code, you can set up a content management system tailored to your requirements, and if you need to write code and add extras, you can do that too. So you can build very, very custom applications with all these high-level bits, and you don't need to do that very much work yourself at all. So we really like Symfony 2 because we like the fact that we can take a component and evaluate it on its own merits and bring it into Drupal core. If someone had said sort of people did used to say 3-4 years ago, why don't you just use Symfony and put all of your stuff on Symfony? But Symfony 1, the framework, it would have been like a near impossible task because we have like tens of thousands of lines of legacy code, and we have a policy of 100% pass rate all the time. Like we can't break stuff because people need to work on other bits of the project. So we absolutely need it to work all the time. So one bit at a time, let's just kind of carefully bring it in, kind of put some shivs in for backwards compatibility, and then spend the next kind of 3 months removing the backwards compatibility and just using it. And we can do that on a kind of rolling basis with different components and different external PHP projects. And Drupal 8, we're still in the middle of it, but all of our own code and Drupal modules should be more in that direction as well. You can take what you want, you don't need what you don't want. If you don't want our user manager, you should just check it out. I don't know how far we'll get there, but that's the kind of direction that we're heading, is that it's really everything ground up, put together, but still with the kind of same feature set that we have now, which we like. I don't want to lose that. This is some of the things that you can do. These are like Drupal 7 screenshots, but the UI hasn't changed at all in Drupal 8. There's like two pages where it has. So you can just go in, this is in core, go to this page, and you can add fields like image fields, numeric fields, and it will set up the forms for you. You can set display options, reorder how things are going to go, and then in Drupal 7, this is safe for the database, which everyone hates because then you can't deploy it properly unless you go and install like an external module and go around and put it back into thing and back into the database. But Drupal 8 is all going to be in YAML because you have a new system that's going in, so you will be deployable and you will just be able to push it. And then there's views as well, so you can build with the data structure that you've just built and the content that you have, you can then list it any way you want, slice it up, add different filters, sorts. Again, it's a whole UI for building SQL queries, but it also there's MongoDB backends, there's Apache Solr backend, so if you index your content in Apache Solr, you can use this to build results such as that. And that's what it looks like. Over there, you've got like a custom-built admin display. So checkboxes, all that kind of thing, bulk operations. You can click these together. And then, image gallery, stuff like that. And people building stuff like that, they're not writing a single line of code to do it. And then rules. I personally never use rules. I just write the PHP. But say someone posts a comment, and you want it to send an email, like send off to a subscription list. But you only want it to send a subscription list if the person who's posting the comment has a particular user role or something like that. Rules lets you, again, in the UI, say, when this happens, do this. It's like a hook system, but it's like a UI on top of Drupal's own hook system. So you can dynamically configure events and responses and the conditions on which those will occur via the UI, and again, export that to YAML and run it. I'm sure people, like really famous people in the thing are going, why would I ever want to do this? But like a lot of people like it because they're not sitting there writing PHP. And the other thing that we have is distributions. So all of those things that you click together and you can export, you can then package those up, stick them in a distribution, put it on Drupal.org, and someone can download like a full commerce suite, intranets, all that kind of thing. And they're all built on the same building blocks. They're not like custom applications built on Drupal. They're Drupal Core, properly contributed modules, and then a little bit on top that just pulls them together to get like kind of very, very end user projects you can just drop in and run. And we're expecting Symfony 2 in the way that we're kind of componentizing core to make these a lot better, because right now, people who write these have to undo all of this stuff that Drupal 7 provides for them and find a way to kind of package the configuration that was in a database. But all of those kind of steps should go out, so you'll see much more kind of polished end user projects coming out based on Drupal once Drupal 8 is out and being used. And Drupal 8, there's a lot of other things we're doing in Drupal 8. Configuration, so you're getting things out of the database and serialized PHP arrays in the database into YAML. So we finally solved that issue because everyone's sick of it. Mobile support, Drew's already went through this. Full multilingual support, so all content and configuration is translatable and kind of business objects, things like that. Trig Technique, the entity system, which is kind of ish ORM, kind of, but not really. People, I'm sure, are going to ask if we're going to switch to like a real ORM, and probably not in Drupal 8 because no one's working on it. If you're working on Doctrine and stuff and you would like us to use it, you need to kind of start now to get into Drupal 9. So don't forget, don't start in 2 years because we'll be back in 2 years. And then just a lot of refactoring. There's already 1,500 issues have been fixed since Drupal 7 was released. So if I look tired, that's why it's like 3 or 4 pull requests a day, every day for the past year. Not all me, Drew does some occasionally. He's not here, is he? So if you want to check it out, that's how to get it. If you want to talk to us about it, like us, well, me personally, but anyone, the Drupal Contribute ISC channel on Freenode is the place to go. If you say, hi, I'm working on Symfony, I'm working on Composer Twig, any of the things that we're looking at, either are using or aren't using, or you want us to use because you think that we should be using your project that we don't know about, come in there and either someone will be interested or they'll know the person who is and they'll tell you. And this is the schedule at the moment. Feature freeze is 1st of December. That just means you can't add any new big features. Like Jesus was talking about like a responsive layout builder. That's what we call a feature. API features are good until 1st of April. That's when we're actually going to start fusing APIs and release maybe August 2012. But we don't have a good history of getting releases out on time. We do expect it to be better this time around because we've kind of capped the number of critical bugs that you're allowed to have at any one time. And it doesn't mean that we don't have bugs, more bugs than that, but once it goes over, we just have a feature freeze every kind of couple of weeks. And we say, no, not committing any of your fun stuff until it goes back down again. And that means that hopefully we're not going to be too many months away from release at any one time. We'll see if it works or not. If it doesn't, people can be very fed up with me because it's my idea.